got no apex directed this way. Tricia said she was coming, but she'd be a little late.
You know how hard they had to try to get ownership on it? Like, they knew about this meeting days ago. We just found out this morning.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Okay, our first item, I forgot to write it into the agenda, I just am asking you to approve the agenda as submitted. I need a motion.
I make a motion to accept the agenda as printed. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, the first order of business is closing out our fiscal year ending in June 30, 2022, and adjusting the budget so we can close out the fiscal year. I'll need a motion to do that.
I make a motion that the clerk adjust the budget as needed so we can balance out the end of the year.
Second. Roll call vote.
Kathy?
Yes.
Phyllis?
Yes.
Colleen? Yes. John?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Okay, our second order of business is we're going to talk the wind ordinance again, we're bringing it up again. We couldn't hear very well the other night, so, Sarah,
I move to consider the board's June 8, 2022 adopt a motion to send the proposed wind ordinance to the planning commission for additional review and to rescind and requirements for such review.
Just a point of order, what are you attempting to do, I guess?
Rescind that motion to send it back to planning.
So I would, I think a township doesn't necessarily have obligation to follow Robert's Rules of Order, but I would try to mirror that. We're gonna reconsider something that you already voted on. And I would tailor your motion to say, I move to reconsider the board's decision to send the draft wind ordinance to the planning commission on June 8, 2022, and to rescind additional planning commission review of the wind ordinance. That's how I'm, just to clear the record.
Clarify it, okay. That's what I want to do is rescind that order, so we can move on.
So you're moving to reconsider.
Right.
Do you want me to maybe restate that for the board?
Yep.
I would say, I move to reconsider the board's June 8, 2022 adopted motion to send the proposed wind ordinance to the planning commission for additional review and to rescind the requirement for such review.
that's also our second. Is there support for that?
Support.
Roll call vote. Well, we have to do a roll call vote.
You don't have to, but I think it is.
Okay, Phyllis? Yes.
Colleen? Yes. John?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Kathy? Yes.
Okay. Now we just want to discuss our draft ordinance, right?
Yes, so if you're reconsidering your decision to send the wind ordinance to the planning commission for additional review and comment, I think it would be appropriate after the planning commission held a public hearing to consider the ordinance, because that is the next step in the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act related to the zoning ordinance. So decide what you would like to do.
Okay.
One point I'd like to bring up, I had made a motion before the last ordinance to put a height limit on wind turbines at 650. Did some further reviewing of what is available. There is a model of a Festus model turbine that is 656 feet. It is 6 megawatts for outage or for production of electricity, and it is the least. It is one of the lowest sound turbines being produced, engineered right now. So I would like to make another motion for the height limit to move it to 665. So that could be included in the discussion of a possible turbine to be used.
Second.
She seconded it.
Okay, we can do a roll call.
Yes, yes, well.
You. Yes. John?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Kathy?
Yes, thanks. Okay. See, what is the next step on this?
So you had a discussion about the wind ordinance, I think at your June 8th meeting, you also mentioned, increasing or adding additional language about a setback from, habitable structure on non-participating lot. I think you would want to talk, if you have a consensus of that change that you'd like to see on June 8th. And then I think it's appropriate for any other board member who has comments or questions about the wind ordinance to talk about the wind ordinance. And then, ultimately, you can make 3 decisions. You could approve the ordinance as presented to you by the planning commission, approve it with the changes that, you have discussed, so approve it with amendments, or you could, deny and or send the wind ordinance back to the planning commission. Those are the options that you have under the Michigan zoning enabling act.
You did want to make sure that it was in there, the wording, that no matter if it was commercial or residential, the,
I was gonna bring that up in the time. I know Steve's had some discussion about the residential, portion of the wind ordinance. And I wanted to confirm that this is, no matter if it's a commercial or a residential, brought to the board, it's still a special use and has to go in front of the PC for approval, correct?
So if you look at your wind ordinance, page 12, number 4, if you see where that's at, talks about single wax for on-site only, which essentially in common language means a personal turbine. It discusses that this may be approved in any zoning district as a special land use exempt from any zoning ordinance requirements prohibiting 2 principal land uses on 1 parcel. So a personal turbine would have to go through the special land use approval process. So you would have to review it, presumably there'd be a site plan. You would review its location. It wouldn't be just like a permitted land use where you check the setbacks and the zoning administrator automatically approves it as long as you meet the more or less dimensional requirements.
So it would be just the residential.
They would both
Would have to-
the way this ordinance is in front of you, both of them would be special land uses. The only difference is the ordinance specifies certain areas where what I would call utility scale turbines could go. And in the personal turbine section, it says any zoning district, with certain standards. So the parcel has to be a certain size. The height of a personal turbine is different, there's different standards, but personal turbines can go in more locations than, utility scale.
there any other discussion?
I know I made them, and I'm assuming it's considered in this draft, that we will, I personally would still like to stay with the 1640 for non-participating capital structure.
Can we move it to the lots? Can we move it to the lot line?
I think it is, quality, it's gonna take up more space, we're at 1,340 to non-participating lot lines right now.
No, you're at 1640,
If you went to 1641, isn't that about 40 acres?
you're 1640.
1,340 is considered a square 40.
Just to clarify, I think for all of you, so
You
you could be 1640 from a habitable structure on a non-participating lot, that's what you discussed last week. And, you also have, this is page 8, currently, right now, under 4, there is a 2 times tip height setback from non-participating lot property lines. So, the height limit discussed, I mean, that would be, if it was the max height limit, that would be about 1,300 feet from a property line. If it was the max height limit, of course, if there was turbines proposed that are smaller than the max height limit, it'd be smaller, but it'd be measured from the property line under that standard.
From property line, right?
Are we moving it to 16?
From non-participating,
Non-participating habitable structure.
So I think what you may want to do is to see, I think Kathy made a suggestion of maybe wanting that from the lot line instead of not participating. So that would essentially increase number 4 on page 8 to 1640 from property line. I think you should see if you have consensus as a board, whether you want to do that or not. Or you could continue to debate the topic.
Well, the no, okay, 1,640 is obviously 300 feet beyond a square 40. So you probably would have to,
It still puts it in my backyard.
1,640, how big's your backyard?
80.
An 80? Well, that depends on if you participate or not. If you don't
I
participate.
don't.
It's nice to know you guys are doing this for everybody and not
That's
just
not-
yourselves. Yeah, that's really nice. I just
No.
discussed.
No more discussion.
Keep going. Dig yourself a hole. Go ahead, John.
Not participating on an 80, you would have to stay 1,640 back away from that 80. So then you would have to be at least, well, you'd have to be on 80 to turn long ways. You probably have to have at least 160 acres to stay away from that 80 the next property over.
That's an awful large amount.
So, I think to make this, go ahead, Steve.
I'm not, I don't need to step on no toes or nothing, but if I understand right, you only own about 5 now, don't you, rather than the 80?
All I'm saying is, if you, even when you go 1640 from my lot line, it puts it in the middle of the second 40 behind me. There's 80 behind me. It puts it in the middle of the second 40. It puts it in the middle of the field back there.
Well, yeah, you would have to be a 40 plus another 300
A
feet.
lot of these people are concerned that they're gonna maybe see one over the treetops. I'm talking about it in my backyard. I'm not talking about it, looking at it over the treetops. neighbors all the way around me want it.
That's why I wanna leave the 1640 to not participate in house panel structures. Obviously, on your 5 acres, you could move it back to the lot line.
It doesn't move it very much farther,
Well, it would, it'd be the,
but a little
whatever
bit.
the width is, 5 acres.
Yeah, a little bit. That's all what I'm asking.
It'd be 2 times the tip height of whatever the structure is from the lot line. And then we should remember that, you know, we're thinking of zoning the entire township. So analogies, I think, with properties are helpful, but we should also remember that we are providing, or you're working on an ordinance that is for the entire township.
Well,
And thinking of development.
what about this right here? Where it says Gratiot County can provide 8 times the size of their county that can provide electricity. Is there any such a thing that if they're adjoining township is providing all of that power, that we don't need to? Why do we do it?
So that's a policy decision, right? So, I mean, you can take that position. I mean, that's really a policy question. It's not really a zoning question, right? Zoning question is the orderly development of certain land uses in your township. So you're probably gonna get frustrated with my answers. It's really a political question, and, you know, I'm not gonna tell you what's right or what's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, we can still adjust that if we have to at a later date, right? Why do we still do changes if we have to, right?
You could do changes to the ordinance, let's say if you adopted an ordinance and it becomes effective. The other thing to keep in mind is, let's say this ordinance was effective as it stands. Every project has to go through site plan review, and you look at the location of each turbine. And I think I've said this many times, but you're drafting an ordinance for a land use, not necessarily a project, for a land use. So anybody who wants the land use. And you can have a project that would theoretically meet, you know, all the setback requirements, but it could still be found not suitable for your township because you don't read this ordinance in isolation with your zoning ordinance, which is a very large document. You look through all the special land use permit factors, and off the top of my head, they would be, is this land use compatible with adjacent properties? Is this land use compatible with the natural environment? Those are what you typically see. And those are discretionary factors that you can apply to a particular project. So just because someone says, oh, I have these turbines, they meet all these setback requirements, doesn't mean the project has to be approved.
Are you saying that they hold a hearing, whatever, to decide whether it's,
Public, yes,
I can come and say I object?
you could, yes. You may want to, what you may, it'd be interesting because conflicts of interest, if you say you object for your personal property, then it's, you can do that, right? But then, if I remember your particular zoning works correctly, the township board has the ultimate say on special land use permits. So let's say you objected to a project on your property, or you said you're for a project on your property, then you would likely have been found to, because this is a direct project, not a legislative action, to have some sort of personal interest in the project. You would have to recuse if you say you object to it. But if you have too many of you who have conflict of interest when you're thinking about a particular project, not a legislative activity, then there is something called the rule of necessity, where basically the case law going back a very long time says if there's a function that a board must do and too many people have conflicts, then essentially you can vote on it regardless, because what the law basically says is you have to perform your governmental duty. You can't just pick people off the street to be township board for the day.
They do better.
Well, do you wanna have are we gonna rerun that motion, or are we're already accepting
So if you were to, what I think I understand you saying, I want to adopt ordinance with two of the changes that I talked about. If you wanted to do that, I would say something along the lines of, I move to adopt the proposed zoning ordinance amendment for wind energy facilities, presented to us by the planning commission with the following changes, and you should specify the changes and, and cite the section, so your minutes are very clear of what amendments that you would be making, that you're attempting to make.
I'll make a motion to accept the wind ordinance as presented to us from the PC board with the two amendments that we have discussed. A height limit at 665 feet and a setback for non-participating habitable structures at 1,640 feet.
And those changes would be in the same sections that you discussed in your June meeting, is that correct? Same,
Pretty much.
it would be in the same language, we just switching the numbers in one, okay.
I second. You got one? I second.
Been moved and supported to approve the motion. You wanna read it again?
So it's the way that I took it, that, I think we wanna make sure, John, this is consistent with what you said, is I move to adopt the proposed wind ordinance as presented by the planning commission with the following changes to make, wind turbines shall be at least 1,600, and I'm gonna read the language that I actually wrote down from last meeting. A wind turbine shall be at least 1,640 feet from a habitable structure on non-participating lot. That'd be page 8, section 2K, where that language would be added 2K1 at the end of that paragraph. And then page 9, section 2M, at the end of that paragraph would say, a wind turbine's tip height shall not exceed 665 feet. So 665 is right?
Correct.
Okay.
It's been moved and supported, roll call vote.
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Kathy,
No,
Colleen, yes. Phyllis,
Yes. This is a legal motion. This is legal. This is not in public.
the reason is that I would like to add something about body of water. We don't have anything that's saying a distance from a body of water.
So you have, if I remember right, if you go to the utility, you have to remember that you go to page 3, the wind energy utility area. So how this was drafted is it allowed it as a special land use in the ag district originally, but then the planning commission went through and named a variety of roads around at least 2 bodies of water. And so there's the 0.75 mile from the water's edge, and then these more or less road boundary that I think is it correlates with the Indian Lake area.
We're following the roads for setbacks. We call it an overlay district for Indian Lakes. On the south, you are south of Owens and Drots. The road that goes down through there, which is Elmy Road, comes back to Bailey Road currently, and comes north to Tamarack Road, north of 46 up here, and then back to the west boundary of the township.
Actually, Dean or
The Tamarack Road, that would be, it curves and comes north to Yankee Road, but it goes straight to the west boundary. I did, during the discussion at the PC meeting, make a motion to move it to Amble Road and Yankee Road on the different boundaries, but that didn't go anywhere at the PC. Using the same boundary on the south side.
I don't know if 3/4 of a mile is far enough to go these other two lakes or not.
The motion has already been passed.
I mean, the procedure would be if you wanted to revisit it, you could do, more or less what you did at the beginning of this meeting, someone from the prevailing side, if you want to follow Robert's rules, although there isn't necessarily a statute or case law that says you need to follow Robert's rules, so someone from the prevailing side would have to make a motion to reconsider and then go back, so it'd be your second reconsideration.
Okay.
If that's what.
I did do some homework on this. There was a time, they wanted to move 3/4 of a mile from the property line instead of a lake side.
Property line of anyone adjoining the lake or?
Right, a lakeside residential,
Yeah,
to move it to the property line. The one, Crump Lake next to it only has 2 ownerships. Sandy Land Farms, Entity, or whatever they call their LLC, and the county park. Even though we still have that in the ordinance. So both of them are 3/4 of a mile from the water's edge. So that's kind of where it got left. I guess part of me had thought about the property setbacks quite seriously, but then I think you would have had to seriously consider the 2 lakes as 2 separate lakes without the same setback, because there's a lot of different characteristics. One has